Lisbon, Celtic versus Inter Milan in the final of the European Cup. If any British team could win this coveted trophy, it had to be Celtic. Inter Milan kicked off, and in a continental near heatwave, maybe the odds were a shade against Celtic. And a fat lot the Scottish heroes and their 15,000 supporters cared about that. Attack is the policy that's won the Glasgow Idols everything this year, except the English Cup, for which they weren't qualified to compete. An early Inter Milan attack found Simpson on the alert. Celtic counter-attacked, coming within an ace of taking the lead. Inter Milan looked really dangerous here. Capellini was brought down by Craig, a penalty. With the spot kick, Mazzola made no mistake. This was where Celtic showed the all-round attacking greatness that made them invincible this season on every big occasion. Second half, Celtic still a goal down in spite of having had 90% of the game so far. They continued piling on the pressure, believing the reward must come before long. The Italians had the luck of old Harry this time. Then fullback Tommy Gemmell shot from 25 yards out. Gemmell's brilliant goal didn't put new heart into Celtic. The old one was good enough to beat anybody. And how their supporters thanked their stars they'd come to Lisbon. But somehow, Inter's defense held firm. Barely 7 minutes from time came the winning goal. Chalmers deflected Murdoch's shot past Saki. That was how Celtic became the first ever British team to win the European Cup.
20 years on, the Lisbon Lions reunited. Fuller of face and figure, but unmistakable as football immortals.
There's a coach coming in, if you listen you can hear it, a clip coming over the hill. And the sound that you hear is as good to your ear as the call of a wild whippoorwill. There's a coach coming in, you can feel it getting near all at once, and it bursts into view. And it looks to your eye like it fell from the sky, like a coach full of dreams coming true.
Oh, don't trust me, boy. Guys, let me back score. We're going to the camp.
A celebration to rekindle memories, sparked off by a familiar coach trip to the base for so many European triumphs. Men as ebullient today as they were cavalier and dashing in combat.
There's a coach coming in, now it's riding in the clear, and the sound of it grows to a din. Now there ain't party going, now they're hollering war. There's a coach coming in, there's a coach coming in.
Seamill Hydro, the pre-match base where relaxation and fun, together with a little bit of mischief, fostered camaraderie which is still apparent today and gave many a sleepless night to the boss. This was a team full of style and humour, with the capacity to stir the pulse rate throughout 90 minutes. They were the supreme sporting entertainers.
Jimmy, there's your boy.
Billy McNeil, known to his teammates as Caesar, leads his troops onto the beach, this time for a trip down memory lane. Yes, there's clear evidence of the passing years, all right. Just look at some of these waistlines. But there's a spring in the step nevertheless, inspired, no doubt, by the renewed camaraderie and the stirring of precious memories. Reliving those pre-match strolls on the Ayrshire beach and recollecting bygone triumphs. The ideal setting for their first reunion in 20 years. But what are they doing now? Jimmy Johnston, Jinky to the world, now coaching the Celtic youth team and helping Bobby Lennox, the reserve team coach, to prepare youngsters for the first team, hoping to recapture the golden years they themselves enjoyed. Still involved with running the club's pools, Steve Chalmers, and he looks fit enough to play. Indeed, he's a top-class golfer. His son Paul continues the tradition by playing for St Mirren. Firhill, the temporary home of Clyde, and they're guided in the First Division by their part-time manager John Clark, Luggy to his teammates, the sweeper supreme. Formerly Celtic's assistant manager until he left Parkhead in a cloud of sadness, but he retains his deep love of the club. Former manager of Partick Thistle and Hibs, Bertie Auld, one of 3 publicans in the side, a natural mine host with a fund of stories to entertain his guests. Murdoch's Lounge Bar, and the proprietor is the former Middlesbrough manager Bobby Murdoch, currently not enjoying the best of health. Across the country in Edinburgh, the third publican, the goalkeeper and elder statesman of the team, Ronnie Simpson. He won FA Cup winners' medals for Newcastle United in the 50s and made his Scotland debut at the remarkable age of 36. Jim Craig, known as Kearney, he was also a top-class athlete, now a full-time dentist and part-time radio broadcaster. The call of the city's financial world was answered by Tommy Gemmell, the former manager of Dundee and now an insurance executive, very much at home in a pinstripe suit, except, of course, at the weekends when he manages Albion Rovers. Regularly joining me in the commentary box as co-commentator and analyst, Billy McNeil, recently sacked by Aston Villa. He was a Celtic manager until 1983. Nighttime down under, the adopted home of the man known to his teammates as Wispy. He now manages a sports emporium in Australia, Willie Wallace. The sun and the warmth of Sea Mill was reminiscent of the searing heat of Lisbon 20 years ago. The welcome from the hospitable Portuguese was friendly. It was the Italians who worried Celtic. First, I'll look at the National Stadium. Vast, open and intimidating in its concrete emptiness. The atmosphere would be oh so different on the night. The training was conducted at the match kick-off time 5:30, still very hot and clearly to the advantage of the swarthy athletes from Italy. And the man in charge, the guide and mentor who was to turn himself into a legend, Big Jock. This man came from humble origins, a miner from Burnbank, Hamilton, whose playing career was inauspicious. Albion Rovers to Llanelli in Wales, and then the history-making stroke of inspiration. He was brought to Celtic Park as a stopgap centre-half late in his career. He became captain and led Celtic to a league and cup double, and then quietly departed from the playing scene through injury. After a spell as youth coach at Parkhead, he achieved instant success as manager of Dunfermline, cup winners in 1961, and then as manager of Hibs, winning the Summer Cup in 1965. The inevitable career path took him back to Celtic, and once again, immediate success. But no one could have anticipated the glory days ahead, except perhaps the man himself. Training at the National Stadium was designed to familiarise the players with the surroundings and the playing surface. They had to get the feel of the arena. Nothing in Lisbon was left to chance. Onlookers couldn't fail to be impressed by the sharpness of the workouts. Jock Stein was one of the pioneers of tailoring football training to individual needs, realising that the requirements of little Jimmy Johnston differed from those of Bobby Murdoch, and the wisdom of those training methods would soon be apparent. Back to the common bond and the beloved green and white. The customary role of joker is quickly re-established by Bertie Auld. And while the pace is slower, memories flood back of Zurich, Nantes, Vojvodina, Dukla Prague and Inter Milan. They were all vanquished by 11 Scots brought up within 50 miles of Celtic Park. They became the first non-Latin team to win the European Cup. They were the only club to succeed with 11 men from their own country. 9 players home-produced. The total purchase price, £45,000.
I don't believe this. We were 3/4 of this team, by the way.
They spent £15,000 to bring Bertie Auld home from Birmingham. Ronnie Simpson was signed in a free transfer from Hibs.
The magic's still there. The lungs have gone. Corner! Play on, play on! And again. One touch, Bobby, one touch. That's all you need.
And Jock Stein paid £30,000 for the final missing link, the Hearts player, Willie Wallace.
Clifford, we've not got enough yet, we're knackered.
And they had the genius of Jimmy Johnston. Always in trouble, but blessed with skills which the passing years can scarcely diminish, but which invite a familiar response, yes, even from his friends. Let's take a look at this tackle once again. And as the replay shows, it could so easily have been Milan or Montevideo. Without doubt, the greatest club side ever produced in Scotland. And by the way, they could have won the FA Cup.
Looking back, it's very, very fresh, isn't it? Very few things have changed. The bus would probably need to have a heavier payload, really, wouldn't it? I don't think the pre-match meal was like this, as it so happens. No, I think it's terrific, Tommy, because I do think it was a highlight of Scottish football. I don't think anyone in Scottish football will ever achieve the same thing, have the same impact as we had in 1967. It seems so fresh. In this place, you mentioned Seamill. This had a lot to do with it. It's funny enough, the weather's just as good today as it was 20 years ago.
Strange enough, aye. Bertie, what about yourself? What were your thoughts?
Well, I'm just looking at the size you knew, Tom. And as usual, it wasn't year round.
Well, now that you mention that, Bertie, I'll just have a wee top up.
But looking back with a marvellous time, didn't we? But the big man's not with us, and we've all been in positions just recently that we felt that he was a very fortunate person, but no really, because he was the one that harnessed us all, didn't he? He was the one that put us in the right road occasionally and strapped our fingers and such like. Tommy, I'd be still playing if I didn't have to play in front of you. He's taken about 14 years off my playing career.
All I can say is John Hughes played in front of you for 10 years and he still didn't receive a pass. All he did was dummy runs for me.
All kidding and joking aside, it was marvellous times, great times, and it was the occasion was marvellous. But today we've come, and the big man was lucky because he had people that were dedicated, they had skill, they had ability, and they all worked hard. And we all appreciate what he did for us, but I think he appreciated what we did for him.
I can remember talking to John. I used to pick John and Jimmy up every morning to go to training, and as the season progressed, I can always remember John saying to me, what if we get into that final, what if we get into that final, what if we get into that final, what if we win the league? And all of a sudden, as the season progressed, we did that, one after another. We get into these cup finals and we won the league and all that sort of thing. You say, so good God, what's happening here? And, I mean, what about yourself, John? I mean, you must have a few memories about that.
As Billy and Bertie said, you know, it came to a time where it was a bunch of players, not the actual 11 here, but the pool of players that came, just happened to be there at the right time, plus the fact we had a good manager, good people under him as well, and looked after us and guided us on our way. And I think the atmosphere, as you say, winning cups and winning leagues, I think the season that we won the 5 in the 1 year, I think as the games progressed, we got more confident. I think we're a team that was confident, and we're confident with our own ability. Plus the fact is, you know, just now you see in football the crowds coming back. We brought the crowds back. We started it, I think, in our era. And the thing I'd like to say is, you know, personally, I think playing with a bunch of lads that's right about this table is, you couldn't ask for a higher standard to play in, and you couldn't ask for better people to play with. And I enjoyed it very much.
You know, the funny thing, I think the big thing, we're very, very quiet at the moment. I think that is not our personality, is it? That's not the personality of this team being quiet.
No,
Well, Jimmy got us into a lot of trouble.
Hey, we all got ourselves into a lot of trouble, Barry.
But you come here, wait a minute, you never know who's listening.
The only thing was, you know, it was always me to get caught. I mean, the rest of you were worse than me.
Oh, wait a minute, man, can I see this? I thought Hampden was our training ground.
Of course,
We went there just to finalise things.
You're talking about the big fella that's sitting, and I mean, as I said, across my shoulder here.
He's always there, wasn't he?
You know, right, he was always there, but I'll tell you, we all talk about playing and whatnot. But to be honest, it took us out of a lot of sticky situations. No, just on the field, off the field, and they all talk about.
Man, speak for yourself, you know.
Right, I certainly, I don't know, by the way, but it took you a few situations, it took him a few situations, right? Of course. But what I'm trying to say is that the man himself, they all talk about him being a genius and everything that he was, but to be quite honest, speaking among ourselves, he didn't really do anything spectacular, did he?
No,
he put it down to basics, didn't he?
Yeah.
Because you used to lift the ball, and of course you'd be going there or that, or what, and you would do something to Wispy, banging the balls in the back of the net. We murdered there at the end of the...
You're talking about the cream de la creme.
Right, no, but me and Barry, what we'd say was we used to go out in a game, you know, and I used to say him before, I says, in Scottish football we used to know exactly, possibly, because you played against these people so long, you would say, well, we know what he's like and what he's going to do, you know, give me the ball at my feet or gaze it behind them. But in the European ties, I used to say him before, what do you think? He says, well, try it for 5 minutes. Went for 5 minutes and he says, right, just to go and check back and get the ball at your feet, go and take him. I think that what we had here was unique, because we had...
Tell me, it is unique.
We had...
What was
it? It is unique, because what we had was, we had a wee man sitting here on my right, Lennox, and a wee man sitting there, Stevie. that was so unbelievable, because see, defenders hate it. The likes of the people with the pace that they had. But we had two magnificent players in the middle of the park who could feed that. We didn't have to tell and talk to each other what was going to happen. They would make cross runs for 40 or 50 yards or whatever. And see their pace used to, defenders used to be unbelievable, didn't they?
Yeah, tremendous.
Is that not right?
I remember one day I never got a programme, and it was a windy day. And I said to me, Bobby, I said, David, I said, will you catch me a programme?
I caught it, no, didn't I?
Field force wins, we must.
People are talking about football. What is it to bring the crowds back into the game again? But if you can remember, Caesar, we had people 10,000 outside the park before the game, 20 minutes before to get in, because of why? In case they missed a couple of goals.
They were wonderful you were going to turn up,
10 minutes. And there's a wee fella that joined us as well, Wispy. Wispy was magnificent. For what? Used to play the ball at him, he would hold it, play it off. You know, I mean, I think we're all just, I mean, each and every one is.
Would you? What do you
think? Are you as good a player as Jimmy says you are?
I'll tell you what, Wispy, speak up. What do you think?
I think that, you know, it was magnificent. I joined, as Jimmy said, halfway through that season, for the season that you won in, I think, at 5. And within a few days of being at Parkhead, I was partially the setup. Where, you know, joining clubs like...
had you trapped for about a year and a half before.
But when I went to Hearts, you know, it was like an apprenticeship for 2 years before anybody would talk to you or do anything, you know. But when I came to Parkhead, within a few days, I was part of the group.
This must be unique. I think Bertie must be the only guy that's ever signed for Celtic 3 times. And I think that's true, isn't it? You went to Dumbarton, and then you went to Birmingham, and then you came back, and you signed first of all. I mean, that must in itself must be unique.
Something, Tommy, I'm going to say something to you. It hurts me to see the club in the situation it is at this particular moment, only at this particular moment, because they've had marvellous years. But I believe that football goes in cycles, and it'll come back, right? When I signed at Celtic Park at the beginning, the boss was Jimmy McGrory, and he said to me, Bert, what would you like to do, or what would you like to see? I said, I'd like to see the jungle. And I went out onto the turf, and it's sacred turf, and it always will be sacred turf, because if you look back the history of Celtic Football Club, there's no other club in the world like it. When you look at the St Mungo Cup, the Coronation Cup, European Cup, there's so numerous things that should happen, and it will come back. All it needs at this particular time is a wee bit of guidance, and I'll get there. I signed for them 3 times, and if I was at the age to sign for a 4th time as a player, I would do it, because it's a marvellous place to play in. And Glasgow is the capital of soccer as far as I'm concerned. Ronnie, you played with Newcastle, a couple of cup finals and everything like that. How did you feel coming to Celtic Park?
Well, I said it today already, that it was one of my best moments, the greatest moment, was signing for Celtic Football Club.
You were tough and all, aren't you? Big joke tough.
Big joke Selkie.
He came into the dressing room, didn't he? I said, what about him? Ronnie, to be honest, honestly, be honest with me, said, you're joking him. As a goalkeeper.
Ronnie, we thought you were assistant manager.
What was your, when you look at the English Cup final victories that you had with Newcastle?
They were great events. They were super too, but I think playing for Celtic Football Club, playing for the club, and I mean this, it was the greatest club in the world I'd played for, and the greatest bunch of lads I'd ever played for. I just made the numbers up. There was 10. There's 10 every... It's very true.
Ronnie, can I ask you a question?
Because I remember some players saying, keep the ball away from him because we'll lose a goal. If you had a situation where, you know, you were defending and it was a 20-yard free kick outside the box, and you had to make a line-up. You only needed one man in the line-up. You got Bobby Murdoch in the line-up, and that was all right, you see. And in fact, often I had to say to Bobby, turn a wee bit right, so I could see. I couldn't see. That's so you can see.
I tell you what, we were very privileged at Lisbon, weren't we? Because Kearney turned up. There wasn't an athletics meeting that day, so he turned up at Lisbon for a European.
And we've not heard anything from him. Ronnie, can I say this? I thought he made a game here. Could you just talk us through that particular match stage?
I misheard what Jock said, you know, and they said to give away a penalty. But before we actually get to the game itself, I think we've been very lucky. The camaraderie we've had today, I mean, it's been a great trip down here. We're only halfway through it, thank God. We've got tonight to go as well. But the kind of feeling we have in the bus coming down and this afternoon here is very reminiscent of what it was like back in '67. I think that was a great thing that we all had going for each other. But a funny thing I remember about getting to Lisbon was that if you remember the night before the game, Jock took us to a laddie's house up a country road, Roddy Lennox. But then coming back again, and in the eve of a European Cup final, we were coming down a main road to meet the promenade to go back to the hotel when Neely Mockin suddenly said, "There's the hotel there, we'll cut down this hill." And in the evening before the European Cup final in darkness, we ran down a hill to get to the hotel. I think we climbed a wall or a fence or something as well.
Yourself, right, and Willie, right, being front players, and Jimmy as well, right, Stevie, right, very, very difficult. You're playing against Italian defenders who were well known for their sort of tactics, if you like. I mean, how did you find it, Stevie? Playing against, you know, close man marking and that sort of thing.
Well, at one point I was going to the toilet and this fella followed me in. Well, you like that?
What was your response, Stevie?
I was just in luck that day.
You're quite a good looking guy.
For my age, Jimmy.
I think what he's asking for that day, I think the big man read it right, didn't he? Because he asked us to occupy the back five, didn't he? The front four.
Wait a minute, before you get any further, what do you mean the front four?
There was 1, 2, 3, 4.
You're in midfield.
No. Where were you playing?
You have to drop that in either.
Did you
Which
remember?
team top were you at, John?
He used to do it. I kid you on, he never dropped front his life.
Whatever you did well, because I'll tell you what, I could have wore a suit that day.
I'll tell the whole team.
I thought you did, big man.
After Kenny gave away that penalty, there was no danger, was there?
See that?
What do you think, Billy?
Jinky.
If you look at the film, there are about 6 or 7 days arguing the referee to. See, the more you look at the film, it was a bigger penalty than we all thought it was.
With the spot kick, Mazzola made no mistake.
At the end of the day, did you ever think, Billy, did you ever think that we ever had a chance against them?
Who?
Milan.
You know
Remember
something,
seen
Johnny? I've
films
never
of them?
felt anything other
They'd
than
done everything.
the
They'd
better
done the
fans,
business.
the better
They'd
fans,
won
you know.
2 world championships.
we were so
And we were getting in as the
Can you remember
underdogs.
going out the tunnel?
I had any teeth. Still haven't it? He'd no teeth. Where is he? He'd a full set. He'd gone.
Have you had it in his pocket at the time?
We're standing in the tunnel, we're standing aside these guys, they're all film stars with the teeth gleaming, the hair all dressed back and the tan. They must have been seen. What is it we're playing? What are we playing? Anybody fancy?
As our hungry Lions and the athletic Italians entered the arena, Celtic were charting unknown territory, but it was all so different for Inter Milan. They had won 2 consecutive European Cups in 1964 and 65, and they had won those 2 World Club Championships. They had world-renowned players seeking their 3rd winner's medal in 4 seasons. Sarti, Burgnick, Facchetti, Garneri, Pichi, Corso and Mazzola. But most important, they had the legendary manager Helenio Herrera, hailed as a tactical genius of his time, revered all over the world. Indeed, a man whose methods had been studied by aspiring coaches from a host of countries, including Scotland. His reputation was never to be the same again. Jock Stein had studied the Herrera methods, not to mimic them, but to learn how to overcome them. The big man would have no truck with tactics based on blanket defences, slavish man marking and cynical tackling. His was a world of stylish craft, ball skills and pace. Football philosophies were on the line in Lisbon, and the world at that time was in no doubt. Herrera's defensive policy would triumph over the swashbuckling approach of Celtic. Stein was certainly admired, but believed to be in top European terms a trifle naive. Inter Milan were hot favourites, Celtic the no-hopers, clear underdogs, even in Scotland, where blind optimism is a national football trait. History would show the debt the world of football would owe to Stein.
Did you
shut your eyes?
You know what I think, honestly, what we're talking about, and I'll still talk about it as well. Every one of us had a bit of character. I mean...
Bad character.
Bad. Oh, aye, bad as well. But no helped each other. I mean, they're talking about people and talking about teams and whatever. But there's people sitting in here that were non-Catholic or whatever. That never ever bothered us. That never bothered us. But it wasn't. You know, I remember us going down in the bus. I remember us going in the bus, right? What was saying? What was our song, me man? The cry was no surrender. Is that right? Was that one of our songs? Right.
You didn't come and help us out in the second leg.
No, you're missing my point, sir.
Think of that second leg. Where were you?
Where was that? I was at home and the shout was on.
And you deserted us, eh?
No.
Can we go back to...
Listen, can I tell you the story?
Tell the story.
Big Joe came to me, right, at half time. It was one each, wasn't it? One each. Into the toilet. And he said, listen, if you do the business for us, he says, if you won by more than 4 goals, you don't have to go, because I had a thing about flying, I hated it. So a lot of people do, I think the rest of you do as well, you know. And I says, you kidding? He says, no, honestly, he says, if we won by 4 clear goals, he says, you don't have to go to the following round. I says, right, went out, and as you know, scored 2 and we had a won another 2 sort of a thing.
Magnificent that night, you must.
Thanks, very. Very. Now, if you want to tell the story. After it, I was buying his penalty box. And he's saying to me, what are you in here? He says, get up. I says, no chance, I says, I won, I promise. Remember I scored the last, it was 5-1, I shouted to him, I said, I don't need to go. I don't need to go, and he said, what are you talking about? I said, I'll tell you after. I'm banging it, 5 minutes to go to the penalty box, and I'm kicking balls. He done a man. Beating him as well. Beating him as well. And he didn't know the story. The big man, no, wait a minute. After it, by the way, the big man, excuse me, Bertie, the godfather, the big fella over there. After the game, he says, listen, you know how he was double wide, you know. Great guy, but he says to me, the coach come in after the game and he says to us, you have got to show Belgrade Jimmy Johnston. I went, you're joking, you're not on. I says, I made a promise, you're not on.
Jimmy, I think we should go back to the big man. It was good for us. No, I'm not going to agree yet. No, but remember, we were out there, training out there. 9. We were having a shooting in practice, and they were refurbishing the place. You get the paint tins out, right? That's how I get the name of Sam, right? But you know how he placed them out and used to dribble around them, so I knocked 2 out and all that. You know? Hey, hey.
You knocked 4 out again.
You're a bad day, Sam. You know? So, that was that because I was shooting at you, right? You and Peter, right? So when I knocked it there and all that, I says, oh, look at big Sam there, you know. So Samuel B. Allison, right, the demolisher. So I demolished the paint tins. So I says, the big man's quote was always, you know, when we played keep you up and things like that, you can't do that on a Saturday. You know, I says, we don't beat paint tins on a Saturday. so that was it. He just went right, everyone did for a bath.
Is that the first time I've ever seen you blown up there?
All kidding and joking aside, funny stories, we had a million funny stories, but the one that I remember most of all, I'd said to the boys earlier that Big Jock had just signed someone to replace me. A guy called Ted Callaghan. Ted Callaghan, he was a marvellous guy, wasn't he? He was a great guy, wasn't he? Marvellous guy. I'll tell you this much, I pitied the guy, I was glad I wasn't younger. I went at this mob. But anyway, we'd played at Firhill and it was a good game. We were winning 3-0 at the time, and all of a sudden I was on the bench. There was only one substitutes at that time, and I was 12th man. Big Jock had tried to bring me in kind of gradually as substitute. So anyway, the score finished 3 each. So we were playing a replay on Wednesday, and the team were hopeless. These were hopeless. But when Big Joke named the team on the Wednesday, By the way, I never even went on the Saturday. The team was the same, but the substitute had changed. So Big Joke must have known I was out at the weekend.
Hey, he knew you were out at the weekend.
So anyway, I knocked his door just before the kick-up. I said, hey, big fella. I says, I was going to swear there, but I changed my mind. I says, all the punters, all the players, all my pals, they're all laughing and joking. He says, how in could you play the same team that played on Saturday? He says, well, I wanted to win the night. I says, but I wasn't even on the park. He says, if things were going to stick at the end of the game, I wanted to put somebody on that was going to win. Memories for him. He used to come up and say, what's that you're drinking? I said, hey, big fella, slow down. Fresh orange. He says, let me taste it. He wasn't a drinker, you know. There was smoke coming out his nostrils.
Look at a Coca-Cola and that, maybe 2 or 3 vodkas in it. And he'd come in, they would
You
go.
only had 2, you must have been a bit clever than us, man.
He got on show him dinosaurs. Remember it, in Vancouver, He's a drink of that, you know, and they would go. And bury that It's Coca-Cola.
If you remember that Celtic film was taken round about Lisbon, and I remember speaking to Jimmy Gordon, who was taken, and I said, how do you think it'll finish up? And he said, well, I think there's a fairy tale about Celtic, and it might just finish up success. It did. Now, there's one thing should have told us that. If you remember, we went down here and we played a bit of golf, and Big Tommy had a hole-in-one at the 11th down there at West Kilbride. Now, the way Big Tommy plays golf, Barry, for him to get a hole-in-one anywhere would have been an achievement. Let's face it.
I don't know about that.
But that should have told us that all of a sudden things were going to go right. Now, if you think, going back to the start of everything, all those fans leaving Glasgow, we were a bit envious of the fans, weren't we? Because they were leaving. They were leaving, weren't they? And they were full of excitement. You remember the cars were painted green and white, and everything it was magnificent. And when we got to Lisbon, the fans made sure. I mean, there was no danger who was going to win, was there? Really?
They were excited, all right. A green and white exodus which will never be forgotten. It was an age when a holiday in Mallorca was a preserve of the wealthy and a pipe dream to the working man. But 12,000 fans set off on the great adventure to support Celtic in Lisbon. It was the first of the major sporting airlifts, a host of charter planes ferrying fans to this unknown land called Portugal, to many a name hazily recalled from long-discarded geography books. They travelled by car, by train and by bus. They hitchhiked, some with barely the price of a square meal in their pockets. The priority was to afford the trip to Lisbon. Getting home was the least of their worries. The British Embassy in Lisbon braced itself. There had never been a football pilgrimage quite like it. Wives and sweethearts were abandoned, places of work were deserted, and even the dole queues were shortened, at least for a time. How the Scots relished the Portuguese welcome, and the locals were fascinated and intrigued by the good-natured revelry of the Scots. Yes, it was to become a carnival of massive proportions.
Boys that you were maybe possibly at school with and worked with and whatnot were at that game. I know guys that were there that I'd worked with and went to school with were at the game. You know, just ordinary supporters.
That's right.
Just went out and said, right, took the week off work, fortnight off work, cost them a bomb, went out there. To me, that's a wee bit special.
Yeah.
You know.
Can you remember the night of the game when we'd won the trophy? Okay, it was just one of these things. We went 5, didn't we? We went 5 that year. But can you remember going back to the airport?
Aye, all the fans.
We went back to with our wives, right?
That's
Okay. Can you remember going back to the airport and all of a sudden, what a reception we got? Remember?
That's right, aye.
Bill Shanklin was there on the bus. He was the only manager that was on our bus.
Berry, what was his quote? The Shanks spoke to
He
Big
turned
Joe.
round, he says, big man, he says, there's only one team in Europe that would have done this.
No, he said, he had one quote to him, he says, you're immortal. And I think
I'll tell you what, you know, there's certain things missing. You know, there's 11 of us here, which is, we were lucky, weren't we, because we get picked on the day. There's fellas round the edges that could have been picked just as easy as a lot of us. But more importantly, I mean, the big man's not here, God rest him.
Yes.
Sean's not here, is he? Neely's not here, Bob Rooney's not here. I mean, they were important factors as well, weren't they? Because that's right, a great chairman.
Important factor. And then you've got the Frank, he was a guy, he was a factor, yeah.
Desmond White, you know what I mean?
That's right, that's what I'm saying to you.
Don't forget, John Fallon was the only substitute.
Well,
At
that's
all
why
times.
he played so well, Jim, wasn't it?
You know?
Well, can I tell you this?
I think he should have been substituted after that film.
After the back here.
I remember going, we went to Spain, we played Real Madrid, didn't we not? And Di Stefano's
He
benefit.
left you out, he showed good wisdom that night, didn't he? He left
And
you out.
I was so hurt because John Fallon gave the best display of goalkeeping I'd seen in so many years. He was unbelievably brilliant. Remember that?
Football bonus, I think we'd all love to have been part. He was, this man, you know, loved him.
Things that worked well for us. We had good spirit, we had good training, we had a good manager, we had good pool of players and all the rest of it. But the one thing that we all should take credit from on the day was the fact that each and every player rose to the occasion, which doesn't always happen.
I didn't. That must have been like big man. You're not there.
You know, that's the thing about it. It's a funny thing about that. If you remember, it was an absolute shambles after the game, wasn't it? Because everybody was in the dressing room. There was no organisation. Nobody knew what was happening. And I had to go up and get the cup myself. And I'll tell you, we got through the crowd, and people said it must have been murder. It was great. You know, when I think about it, it was magnificent going away to get it. In amongst people that were so happy about you winning the cup, it was fine. But can you remember getting back to Glasgow?
That was a climax.
Never saw that.
That was a climax.
Imagine I think about you day and night. It's only right to think about the girl you love and hold you tight. So happy together. I should call you up, invest a dime, and you say you belong to me. So ease my mind. Imagine how the world could be so very fine, so happy together.
After the triumphant drive through the streets of Glasgow, the tumultuous reception at Celtic Park, packed to capacity to honour the returning gladiators, an occasion full of emotion. It touched the hearts of the young men being acclaimed. When they embarked on their life of sport, they couldn't have conceived such a day. Paradise indeed. Not only the 11 who played in Lisbon, but the reserve players, so talented in their own right. Remember the names: John Fallon, Ian Young, Willie O'Neill, Jim Brogan, Charlie Gallagher, John Hughes, Joe McBride. They too would have graced any team in Britain. But it was more than the celebration of a cup win. It reflected a football occasion which put Scotland on the map, filled Scottish people with pride, brightened a host of humdrum, worry-laden lives. Industrial output was increased. Such was the impact of this historic triumph. And the effect on Celtic Football Club was equally significant, but kept well in perspective by their chairman of the day, Bob Kelly.
I myself, and I am quite sure that all the people in the past who had the great honour to be in charge of this club do not regard themselves as other than trustees of a wonderful tradition. The club is much bigger than any player or any individual connected with it.
From the coach to the trophy room, the ceremonial placing of the European Cup on a cabinet already laden with the Scottish Cup, the League Cup, the Glasgow Cup, and the League Championship trophy. But this was special. An impossible dream had been realised. The Lisbon Lions from 1967 to 1987. But let's remember the man who led them, the big man, the man who made it all happen.
And for...
We're home to add a few victories. We got to the semi-finals, I think, last year. So
Gascoigne against Cole. Now